Hello, dear listeners, and welcome back to English Listening Pod. In this video, I will talk about Napoleon Bonaparte, who was born on a small island in a low, noble family to rule most of Europe. His life is full of sudden rises and sudden falls, great plans and terrible mistakes, brave soldiers and lonely nights. This is a story told simply, so that anyone learning English can follow it and feel the excitement and the sadness in equal measure. Napoleon was born on August 15, 1769, in Ajaccio, a town on the island of Corsica. Corsica had been part of Italy for a long time and had just become part of France. His family was not rich, but they were proud and careful with their name. As a child, Napoleon was serious and quiet. He loved to read maps and think about how armies moved across land. He spoke Corsican and Italian at home, and he learned French later. Because he was different from many of the French boys, he often felt he had to work harder to show he belonged. That feeling, to prove himself, followed him all his life. When he was 9 years old, his family sent him to a school in France to learn to be a soldier. At school, he learned math, history, and how to use orders and commands. He was not the kind of boy who loved parties. He liked quiet work, numbers, and plans. He loved maps. Teachers saw that he had a sharp mind and a strict way of thinking. He learned to be careful with details, and he learned to think ahead. These lessons helped him later when he led armies and when he organized a whole country. The French Revolution changed everything in France and for Napoleon. In 1789, the people of France rose against the old kings and the rules that kept many poor. The revolution brought chaos, but it also opened doors. Young men with talent could grow fast in the new army. Napoleon used his chance well. He was brave and smart in battle, and he learned to win trust quickly. In 1793, during a fight at a port called Toulon, he showed strong skill and earned a promotion. He was only in his 20s, but people began to notice him. A few years later, Napoleon led an army in Italy and won many battles. He moved with speed. His soldiers liked him because he shared their hardships and because he explained plans clearly. He could be strict, but his plans often worked. His victories in Italy made him famous. People read his letters home and admired his confidence. He wrote with energy and a clear mind, and he always seemed to see the next step before anyone else did. Napoleon also went to Egypt with the French army. That voyage mixed war with science because he took scholars and scientists to study ancient buildings and plants. The Egyptian campaign had strange successes and strange problems. He won some fights and lost others. The important thing is that he learned more about leadership and about how politics works in many lands. He learned that battle is only one part of being powerful. Politics, reputation, and public opinion matter too. By the end of the 1790s, France had a lot of political trouble. People argued and leaders changed quickly. Napoleon was clever about these changes. In 1799, he returned to France from Egypt and took part in a political move that made him the most powerful man in the country. He did not call himself king at first. He used the name First Consul, but soon he did more than command armies. He made big changes in government, law, and money. He made the tax system work better so the state could pay soldiers and build roads. He created schools where young men could learn science and engineering. He made peace with the Catholic Church. So many people would calm down after long years of fighting and worry. These actions made France more stable. Napoleon wanted the country to have clear, fair laws. Before him, laws in many countries were confusing and different in each region. He drew up a new set of laws called the Napoleonic Code. This code put the most important rules in writing, so judges and people could read them and understand their rights. The code said that people had clear rights about property and contracts. It organized laws about family and inheritance. The Napoleonic Code was simple to use, and it spread to many parts of Europe. Even years after Napoleon's time, many countries used ideas from this code when they built their own laws. His power grew. On December 2nd, 1804, he stood in the great cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris and made himself emperor. The scene was full of ceremony. He wore a fine uniform and a crown. The Pope was there, but Napoleon took the crown and placed it on his own head. That single action told the world that Napoleon believed he had the right to rule and that he could shape France in his way. Becoming emperor gave him the power to make fast changes, and it gave him the title people would follow. As a leader, he was different from many kings before him. He cared about how things worked. He loved plans and details. He organized the army in a new way. Instead of one big, slow army, he created many smaller groups called corps. Each corps could move on its own and join the main army when needed. This idea meant Napoleon could move fast and hit enemies where they were weak. He used good maps, strong artillery, and fast movement to win many battles. He understood that speed and surprise could beat larger enemies who moved more slowly. One famous example of his skill was the Battle of Austerlitz in 1805. There, Napoleon faced armies from Russia and Austria that were larger than his own. He used a clever plan. He appeared to be weak in one place to make his enemies move wrongly, and then he struck a strong blow at the moment they were unprepared. The result was a great victory. Soldiers and leaders remembered Austerlitz for its sharp planning and bold execution. Victories like this made Napoleon's name known across Europe and made many kings afraid. Yet he had trouble at sea. The British Navy was strong and kept control of the sea routes. At the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805, the British Admiral Horatio Nelson defeated the French Navy and its Spanish allies. This loss meant that France could not easily move troops across the sea, and that Britain stayed safe from Napoleon's direct invasion. Because he could not beat Britain at sea, he tried to beat Britain by blocking trade. He created what he called the Continental System, which aimed to stop European countries from trading with Britain. The idea was to hurt Britain's economy and make it weak. In practice, the blockade was hard to control. Smugglers and old trading habits made the plan fail in many places. Also, the blockade made many people in Europe angry because their businesses lost money. In Spain, Napoleon made a big mistake. He removed the Spanish king and placed his brother on the throne. The Spanish people did not accept this and rose in anger. Guerrilla fighters, small groups of local fighters, attacked French soldiers in many places. These small, quick fights slowly wore down French strength and made things difficult for him. The war in Spain was long and costly. It showed that winning big battles did not mean winning hearts and minds. Local people fighting for their land could be a dangerous problem for an invading army. Napoleon's greatest error was his decision to invade Russia in 1812. He gathered a huge army called the Grand Armée. Men came from many countries under his control. At first, he hoped a fast campaign would force the Russian leader to agree to his rules. But Russia was large, and the Russian generals avoided a big battle. Instead, they retreated and burned their own towns and supplies so the French could not use them. This tactic forced Napoleon's army to march long distances without food. Then winter came. The cold, hunger, and sickness killed many soldiers. By the time the army tried to leave Russia, only a small part of the soldiers survived. The retreat from Moscow became one of the worst disasters in military history. The loss broke the myth that he could not be defeated. After Russia, other European countries saw Napoleon as weak, and they gathered armies together against him. In 1814, the Allied armies entered Paris. He surrendered and was forced to step down as emperor. They sent him to a small island called Elba in the Mediterranean. Elba was not a large prison. He had a home and a small court, and people thought the story was over. But Napoleon was not ready to give up. In March 1815, he escaped from Elba, returned to France, and marched into Paris with soldiers who still respected him. For a short time, the people cheered, and he once again sat in power. Historians call this short return the 100 Days. The final and most famous battle of Napoleon's life was at Waterloo on June 18, 1815. There, in Belgium, he met the Duke of Wellington and Prussian forces led by General Blücher. The weather that day was bad, and the ground was wet. These conditions made it hard to move artillery and cavalry. Napoleon's army fought hard, but the Allies held their positions and then counterattacked. The battle ended with a defeat for Napoleon. After Waterloo, he could not find a safe way to return to power. He surrendered to the British, hoping for better treatment. But the British sent him far away to the island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic, a lonely and windy place where he lived under guard until he died on May 5, 1821. Even in exile, Napoleon wrote and spoke about his life. He tried to explain his choices and to leave a record of what he had done. He often spoke of his love for France and his desire to make it strong and modern. He also saw his failures clearly in his final years and thought about the reasons that had led to his fall. Napoleon's life left many mixed feelings. On one hand, he caused many wars that brought pain to millions of people. On the other hand, he made changes that built the modern state. He created a system where people could receive jobs based more on skill than on birth. He reformed schools so more students could learn useful skills. He built better roads and improved the system by which taxes were collected. He also wrote the Napoleonic Code, which helped make laws clearer and fairer in many places. These ideas helped some countries grow and modernize, even if they came through hard times and war. Many myths grew around him. One is that he was very short. In truth, he was about average height for a man of his time. The confusion came from different measuring systems and from enemies who made jokes about his size. Another myth is that he wanted to rule the entire world alone. The truth is more complex. He wanted power and security for France, and he wanted a place for himself and his family in the new order. But his ambition took him far beyond what was wise, and that is how many of his problems started. Napoleon had a private life that shows him as a human being, not just a leader. His marriage to Josephine was filled with love at first, but also with trouble. Josephine could not give him a child, and this worried him because he wanted an heir. For political reasons and to continue his line, Napoleon divorced Josephine and married Marie-Louise, an Austrian princess. With Marie-Louise, he had a son, but family life was never easy for him. He worked too much and gave too little time to quiet affection. He loved small comforts, such as music and good books, and he liked uniforms that were always neat. Even though he worked to control the world around him, he often felt lonely and insecure inside. Napoleon's ability to inspire his soldiers was one reason for his success. He knew how to speak to men who worked hard and who were far from home. He shared their hardships and moved with them through cold nights and long marches. He rewarded bravery and used medals and honors to show who had served well. This personal touch made many soldiers follow him with loyalty that was strong and steady for years. At the same time, Napoleon used fear and strict rules to keep order. He kept tight control of the press and used strong police to find opponents. He believed that a strong central power was necessary to stop chaos. This belief made some people admire him for creating order, while others hated him for removing freedoms. This mix of order and control is part of what makes people still talk about him today. After his fall, the map of Europe changed again. Many rulers returned to old ways, but others kept the changes he had made because they were practical. New ideas about nations and national identity grew stronger. People in places like Germany and Italy began to imagine new countries based on language and culture, and these ideas later helped shape the formation of new nations. In some ways, his actions pushed Europe toward modern change, even though his primary goal was personal power. People still study Napoleon's wars in military schools because he changed how armies moved and how leaders used speed and logistics. He showed that planning, timing, and the ability to move men quickly could win battles against larger forces. His operational ideas, such as dividing an army into independent corps that could unite at a key moment, are lessons still read today. When we think of Napoleon now, many questions come to mind. Was he a hero who modernized Europe, or was he a conqueror who caused suffering for his own glory? The answer holds pieces of both. He brought order and law, but at the cost of years of war. He opened chances for individuals to rise by talent, but he also made himself the center of power and refused to give it up easily. His life teaches that power can build a modern state and also blow it apart if used without careful limits. If you ever visit places connected to Napoleon, you will find buildings and streets named after battles, and you will see the signs of the modern state he helped shape. In Paris, the Arc de Triomphe honors many soldiers of his time. Museums keep his letters and uniforms. Law students still read parts of the code he helped write. These traces remind us that his life was both a story of bold action and quiet planning. The more we learn about Napoleon, the more we see a person of strong contrasts. He was small in some ways because he wanted more control than any one leader should keep. He was great in other ways because he helped make systems that lasted. He used war and law to try to remake a continent. His story is dramatic and useful, full of lessons about ambition, leadership, and the cost of large dreams. History remembers Napoleon as a man who rose from a strange place to rule many lands, and then fell to a remote island far from the people he led. The story is a warning and a lesson. A single leader can change much, for better and for worse. But the world is larger than any one person. He believed he could shape Europe, and for a time, he did. He left a mixed gift: law, roads, schools, and new methods of war, paired with years of blood and sorrow. Thank you for listening to Napoleon's story. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe. Tell us in the comments which part of his life surprised you most: his rise from a small island, his great victories, or his fall at Waterloo. Thank you for watching, and see you next time for another story from history.